Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Secretary. It's good to see you again. During 9/11, I was assigned to the Orlando International Airport as a police captain, and I was also the vice president of the International Association of Airport and Seaport Police. So I had an opportunity to work with law enforcement all over the world, our federal partners, airport authorities, to restore trust and ensure the safety of the traveling public. In other words, Secretary Kelly, as you know, we have come a long way in this country, and it would be a shame if we allowed ourselves to go back. We had, as you know, recently the shooting in Fort Lauderdale, also had an incident in Los Angeles. And I think there's no greater time when we need law enforcement presence in our airports. However, in President Trump's budget, he proposes a cut to the LEO reimbursement program, which would take law enforcement officers away from our exit lanes and other places. How would you, working with the TSA, guarantee that there's really not a diminish in law enforcement presence in our airports?
Well, I think the expectation is that, well, let me back up and say every time I talk about doing something security-wise in airports, I immediately get calls from mayors in the airport industry to say, hey, don't do that because this airport generates unbelievable amounts of money for this community, this city, whatever. So that's.
I remember those days,
Yeah.
but 9/11 kind of changed that response too. It's a shame we're kind of going back to that concern, but.
But that said, as you know, the TSA, not really a law enforcement organization, no arrest and all of that. Clearly, that's a state and local responsibility. And we have taken, I would say, TSA, because they're not law enforcement and a lot of other reasons, have taken on things in the airports that are probably inappropriate for them. I don't believe TSA should be made law enforcement. They do a very, very good job at what they do. So the idea is that where we can't secure doors and things like that, then the expectation would be that the local law enforcement would take that responsibility. Because ultimately, they in fact have the law enforcement responsibility in the building or on the facility.
So then resources would not be available, though, to supplement funding for those officers, and you would ask local jurisdictions to assume that within their budgets.
And that's where we are now.
Okay. I know you've heard this term many times. I have to say it again, especially being from Orlando, regarding the UASI funding. As you know, Orlando now has the unfortunate distinction of being home to the deadliest mass shooting. We're almost at the 1-year mark where, you know, a lone wolf terrorist walked into a nightclub, killed 49 people and injured many, many more. Law enforcement, under the circumstances, I think did a unbelievable job on that night, but we know that they're also responsible for the 1.2 million residents who live in their community, as well as 68 million people who visit Orange County every year. And so could you, and of course, Orlando is not on the list to receive funding. So could you, Secretary Kelly, talk a little bit about the methodology? What are some of the things that you look at? It's a little bit confusing that a place that's so responsible for so many people with the deadliest mass shooting is not on that list. Could you talk a little bit about the methodology?
I think you know this. The way we determine the risk is it's a congressional program, and then DHS, FEMA plug in various factors, and then that comes out with what municipalities are considered to be higher risk and lower risk. And so when we did that this year, and it has to do with population and a lot of other things, DOD facilities, critical infrastructure, and all of that goes into the formula as set by the Congress. And Orlando didn't come out high enough to get funding.
I know that the administration is also looking at a cost sharing of 25%, I believe.
Right.
If a jurisdiction is unable to meet that amount that is on the list, will those funds be reallocated? And if so, what is the formula for that?
Yeah, I think the expectation is they will be able to meet it. It's an important thing. 25% doesn't seem like an unreasonable amount.
But if for some reason they were not able to meet it?
That would be their decision.
would those funds be reallocated to
We would-
another jurisdiction?
We would, you mean all of the funds, the 75%?
Would another city then move up to be on
That's
that
not the
list?
way, I don't believe, I'll get back to you. I don't believe that's the way it works.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr.
Generally
Chairman. I
yields
yield
back, and
Thank you,
Mr.
ma'am.
Higgins is recognized.